everyone. Today we are joined by Tony Clark, CEO of NextWave, a next generation consulting firm focused on modernizing financial services firms through AI and automation. With over 3 decades of industry experience, Tony built NextWave to help financial institutions replace manual processes and spreadsheet driven operations with AI led systems that improve risk, compliance, and performance. His work centers on making AI practical and impactful for leaders across financial services. Tony, it's a pleasure to have you with us today. Thanks, Tony, for spending your Friday morning with us today on neural networking with Konverge AI. I am very excited to ask you a series of questions today, especially considering you come from the financial services background. And financial services is something I feel like healthcare. It affects everyone, every person on this planet in their day-to-day life at some touch points, whether we are swiping the credit cards or we are accessing our bank accounts or we are doing any single transaction anywhere, we come in some touch or some form of financial services. So as we start our discussion, can you walk us through your experience in the industry and how you have seen AI evolve over the years?
Thanks, Ketan. It's fun to be on this side of the microphone for today's conversation. So as you know, I host the London FinTech podcast. I'm normally asking the questions, so let's see how I get on with answering them today. My journey, I started with a firm called Anderson Consulting in London a little bit over 30 years ago. It just seems like such a long time. And that firm, of course, is Accenture and have done incredibly well in the sector. I was there for, I think, 9 years. So I was quite a long stint, and I was working on process projects and some technology projects for majority the financial services sector. So I had a short stint in energy, and then I think my first FS project was probably JP Morgan. We did some work on the Euro project with Goldman Sachs, and I worked at firms that don't exist anymore like Bear Stearns and many others. So I've been in the financial services space as a consultant myself at the beginning. No one was really talking about AI at that point. We were talking about the internet. Actually, I remember when the first browsers were landing on the desktops with some of the developers at Goldman Sachs when I was there, and we were getting very excited about Mosaic browsers and Netscape and things like that. So it really goes back quite a long way. AI, of course, has been out there in the sector. In the background, I mean, AI, I think, as a term was coined in the 1950s. So certainly when I was starting my career, there was work going on. But I think in the industry, the early implementations and adoption were mostly around algorithmic trading and machine learning, and there was lots of document processing work. So the likes of OCR for optical recognition on documents and intelligent automation. There was RPA was sort of a form of early machine automation, and what we now call sort of narrow AI, the chess computer or calculator that's been created for a particular task. That's been in the industry, particularly in the modeling and the algo space for decades. So I guess that's really where AI started to get traction. For me personally, in my journey, I left Accenture to help launch and run a couple of boutique consulting firms. I then became part of a firm some of your audience probably know, which is Synchron, who are sort of mid-market challenger tech-first consultancy, great firm. I helped create the UK regional business. In fact, run that for the best part of 5 years. And we had something called Fin Labs and Finance Labs, and it's still a big thing for many consultancies, and Synchron was quite early in this. And we were building AI and data-driven and automation solutions in Fin Labs 10 years ago, and I don't know how many they have now, but it's probably over 100 of these solutions and accelerators. Really, that's where I first got exposed to what we now think of as some of the more modern generative AI type models. And I don't think anyone was, again, using the phrase LLM, but we were doing things like gradient boosting to find potential mortgage defaults, and using quite advanced image recognition software and algorithms to predict insurance claims and underwrite insurance policies and things like that. So really practical usage of AI. And NextWave, which has been around now for 6 years, has been on the AI journey with our financial institution clients, since we started the firm. And I guess we'll talk about that in a minute.
Great. So I can see that you have had an extensive experience right from consulting to implementation of the technology, which covers the complete value chain. And as you rightly pointed out, the field of AI has been in existence for many years, but the applications that the industry started would be just in the last 10-year span, and the use cases that you talked about. So one thing in AI, as you know, what happens is that, as the MIT report also points out, is that 85% of the pilots, they never see the light of production. So for any institution or enterprise wants to go into this space, it is important for them to correctly identify the right use cases where AI can be applied. And this, I'm sure, is the case with the financial services domain as well. So a lot of banks know AI can help, but they don't know where to start, right? And when a financial institution comes to you, how do you identify which use cases are worth solving versus ideas that just sound interesting?
It's a great question, Ketan, and you're right that MIT and others have observed that 95% of these AI prototypes never go to production. Some of our banking clients told us that they were running hundreds of POCs last year and even the year before. That experimentation cycle of try something, fail fast, learn something, move on, is, I think, part of the AI adoption learning curve. And Gartner said that it takes you about 18 months to go through that and reach maturity where you really know what your platforms and approach and your strategies should be. So every firm should be on that curve to some level. But on the journey, I guess it's important to be able to focus in on the use cases that have really got value for the business. That's ultimately what this is all about. And the sector to date has been focused mostly on coding assistants, which have matured dramatically this year, have matured in terms of what they can do, and what I call knowledge bots, so knowledge handling and chat bot type interfaces, and knowledge handling perhaps into compliance divisions or supporting regulatory use cases, perhaps some of which we might talk about in this conversation. This year it's expanding into agentic frameworks. So for me, the opportunity space is AI plus automation and agentic use cases that sit on workflow technologies. And with that context, how do you choose which use case to go for, right? So, well, we always start with the business problem. So is what problem or what opportunity are we trying to solve for? And if you unpack that, for every organization, there's really three things: growth, efficiency, risk, and control. Think about it, everything's in those buckets, and some opportunities will be in more than one. But you might be growing into a new country, launching a new product to your client base, scaling out your business due to increase in volumes. There's many, or merging with another company, maybe post acquisition. There's various strategic initiatives that sit in the growth bucket. Efficiency is really all about scaling out without adding overhead, taking cost out of the operation, doing things on a real-time basis more accurately, and with greater utilization and a better return on our investment. And risk and control, of course, is the world of regulation, risk, control frameworks, compliance, sustainability. And there's all sorts of use cases that sit in those buckets. So we start there. What are we trying to do for the business? And then we start to look for, well, what are the patterns for automation and AI that present themselves here? Is this a low volume case management type use case? Is it a high volume transaction tick type use case? Are there patterns where generative AI or agentic approaches are going to add genuine value to the business, but without introducing risk? So you wouldn't necessarily just throw an LLM solution at product recommendation for vulnerable customers. That would be a disaster. You know, a probabilistic model making inconsistent recommendations, and in the regulated space, all of this needs to be auditable and explainable. So there are certain use cases that lend themselves very well to AI, and there are some that at this stage firms would be minded to stay away from. So we look at it through the AI risk lens. You know, what is ethical, what's safe, what could be measured and explained to the regulator. And then we look at feasibility, we look at cost, we look at timeline. What would it take to build this? Do we have the platforms for it? And where does it fit in the firm's strategic ambition and budgets? So I guess quite a lot of filters. And that's really how I would approach prioritization.
So I had a follow-up question on this. So you said a very important point that one way to look at it, you first bucketize it as per the business, whether it's growth, risk, or productivity, as you pointed out, and then you marry it with the technology. But do you think that there is also an AI literacy issue here, where a lot of enterprises, they would in the next 1.5 years would require their leadership to go through the AI literacy program in order to also choose and marry these business buckets with the technology?
Absolutely. I think the AI literacy challenge is probably the biggest thing of all. You know, the biggest enabler and threat to organizations. We've been running AI roundtables in London with senior clients for the last 2 years, and we've had engineering teams at one end of the table and heads of compliance business at the other end of the table. And that's a real example from one of the larger banks. And the engineering team update was that they've built their own LLMs and they have lots of data science and machine models, and they feel that they're very much on the front of AI development. And their business counterparty at the other end of the table was like, I don't even know how I'd use AI in my business at all. And so until there's some level set on AI understanding and what's possible, then how can you set the business strategy? You know, the business strategy relies on the enabling models and the awareness of what's possible through AI and automation. And the level of education across corporate firms is vastly different. So at the same time, the models are improving, as I understand it, doubling their capability every 4 months. It's taking corporates 18 months to 2 years to adopt a strategic technology platforming initiative. So the gap's just getting bigger. So I think that's the biggest thing. And you know, I'm sure we'll come to it, but in terms of what firms should be doing, it's bridging that education gap and getting hands-on.
Right, right. Now, having said that, the financial services sector has always been somewhat choosy due to the regulatory compliances in selecting the technology, the tools, and platforms while adopting the tech. So when it comes to selecting the technology, tools, and platforms, what frameworks do you use to decide what is right for a bank, especially given the compliance risk and explainability requirements when we are trying to start doing any kind of POCs or AI implementations?
Yeah, that again, a good question. And so just to position that for us with the NextWave team, we come with recommendations, but we pretty much always do this with the client. So our clients are large financial institutions. They're generally well on the AI journey. They have AI centers of excellence, innovation teams. You know, Bank of America, who I spoke to on the London FinTech podcast, has 8,000 technology patents. They've patented 8,000 tools and techniques, and 1,800 of those are AI and machine learning patents. So their team of technologists has been registering patented approaches and tools and techniques across the entire organization, and they've got a very federated innovation structure, which is involving all of the engineering and business teams in the innovation process. So when we work with clients like that, they generally have an approved technology stack. They've probably done a lot of work in their data science and engineering teams on LLMs and choice of technologies. They've probably teamed up with one of the frontier models. They're either sort of, got Anthropic, or they've got teamed up with OpenAI, or maybe they have more than one in the building. So we have to be cognizant of what's already there and what the stack or the standard is. It may be emerging, but what that is for our clients, and we work within those parameters. At the same time, we would bring, and this comes more to point solution when we're saying, well, if we what might we deploy for anti-money laundering in the fin crime space? Our chosen technology there is Quantexa, which is a firm that we work very closely with, and there's AI in the box on the Quantexa platform. The Quantexa data graphing capability is entirely auditable and ticks the box completely in terms of compliance and auditability of data, but they have some generative capabilities that are very powerful. And so there are certain use cases where we'd be able to make a recommendation and say, hey, you should use something like this. And there are other technologies that we work with, like Alteryx, which is very strong in auditable data pipelines to get your data ready for AI, working on top of cloud data platforms like Databricks or Snowflake, and workflow automation platforms like Konverge. So there's some things that are in our toolbox that we would bring. And then, given whatever exists in our client as a standard, what are recommendations that we might add to that, we then need to look at what is the governance and risk framework. So what's the client's risk as AI safety stance? What's their policy on that? How are they handling agentic controls, bias, hallucination training? And actually, for the audience here, there's a great book on this called Governing the Machine, which is written actually I have a copy on my shelf here, which I'm going to, for those watching online, Governing the Machine by Dr. Paul Dongo and Ray Etel Porter. This is Amazon #1 bestseller. It's the best book on AI governance in the corporate sector. So have a read of that. It'll tell you all the standards and committees and approaches for AI safety and risk, and completely unpack things like the EU AI Act, the US NIST framework. There's a recent framework that I've seen in the last few weeks, the AIUC, which is an underwriting standard for agents. I'm very interested to see what that brings in terms of control. So those things are frameworks that corporates must look at their AI plans and their AI applications through that lens as well. So I guess those are the factors that come into consideration, but the choice of tools for a particular institution is generally going to be a product of all those things, and it'll be sort of individual to that firm.
Great. I had a follow-up question on this. So you spoke about the ready-made product/accelerators which are already available, for, like the example that you gave for the anti-money laundering or making use of data bricks. So how do you decide for the use cases to go between build versus buy? This is also one of the questions that always the enterprises have, that for which products we should pick up out of box from the market and which ones should we build, considering that there are always existing enterprise tools and you need to integrate them in many complex workflows.
Yeah, I think an overlay there, whatever you do needs to be open and interoperable. So the models are changing. It's a connected ecosystem. Firms will have microservices applications. They'll have a plethora of APIs, internal, external. So the ability to plug and play is massively important, and particularly in the context of the speed at which the models are evolving and new components are coming to market. So in the AI arena, things like MCP for connecting systems, super important. What else would I say to that? Sorry, Kessa, you have to throw me the question again.
Yes,
I
so
lost my thread. We can edit that bit.
yeah, no. So I was asking that there is always this dilemma of build versus buy for building any kind of AI,
Yes.
but use cases, that for these use cases we will buy the out of box product, and for these use
Yes.
cases we would build it on our own, because then there is a complex integration in the workflow that needs to be done. So how do
Yeah,
we
so the-
decide? Or do we follow any framework for doing the build versus buy?
Again, different firms will have different policies and stances on build versus buy. Sometimes it's buy to build. So the label that we used a lot recently, perhaps less so these days, on low code, is Lego brick technology, where you're buying a platform technology with rapid assembly and rapid development to build your application. And I think the game has changed completely since the start of 2026, because the AI coding assistants now everyone can vibe code and can produce enterprise grade technology. Really, the individual engineer role is either going away completely or transforming to more of a forward engineer business functional input, in the context that the AI coding assistants can produce the code. So what we've seen, what that means for SaaS stocks and in stock prices in the market, and for low code platforms out there, they're very much part of that group that are now under a lot of scrutiny and pressure as to what their role is going to be in the AI era going forward. So, is it build or is it buy? Well, actually, I would add to that: is it AI generated, which I guess is a build, but it's an AI build, which I think is now very much on the menu for all major institutions. I've spoken to two C-suite CIOs in the last month who've both said that AI is doing pretty much all their coding, and that's completely changed their headcount plans and their strategy.
Yes, so I was going to ask the question on that. How are you observing that how they are trusting the code which is generated with the AI assistant? And are there any best practices they are following to govern the code, the quality, and the trust?
You'll have to ask my team, Ketan. So I'm not. I am vibe coding a few things. We're using some of the vibe coding that we're doing actually now in consulting outputs, but at the engineering level, there's a maker checker model you can use. And I think the big frontier labs are doing this. Actually, they're using AI coding to produce the next version of their product, and then using the same crawled code or whatever it may be to check and do QA on that code. So that's sort of where the industry is at. But in terms of best practices, we at an engineering pod level, I'll take that one away and ask the team what they're doing.
Great. Because that is something everyone wants to know these days, that how do we put a governance around the code which gets generated. So coming back to the question that many banks, they run the AI pilots, but not all of them, they reach the production, and that percentage is still less, where the AI pilots go into the production. So in your experience, what usually breaks between the pilots and the scale, and how do successful teams get past that point?
Yeah, that's a good question. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Business alignment. So if you've got that misalignment I was talking about between the engineering teams and the business ownership, fundamentally everything needs to stack up in terms of business value and business outcomes delivered, and that's where you have to start. So what should firms be doing? Well, they should be putting business product owners together with the engineering teams at the start, and the objective should not be to deploy an LLM. The objective should be to deploy a working underwriting workbench for insurance, for example. So it's a business outcome that is measurable. That's the initiative, and if you frame it that way, and staff the delivery teams that way, then you've got a much greater chance of creating something that can go into production. And then sitting with that, there's a whole plethora of reasons why initiatives don't get beyond the pilot stage. Enterprise data inconsistencies. So you say, oh, I've proved this at POC level. Now I've got to go hold a firm, and that data quality and data coverage for real production scale data, and it is a big problem. How do you get your AI data ready, right? And how do you know that you're covering all your clients, all the clients that you want to cover consistently, maybe from multiple data sources in different formats and granularities, so that the cloud data platforms and the data lake initiatives go some way towards that. But then you also need to think about how do we actually make the data that goes into the models explainable and auditable. So how are we doing those data pipelines in a consistent way? And the models themselves, so again, they might look good on first pass on the POC or early pilot, but then there's recursive effect and a model drift and a bias and hallucination comes in, and again it comes back to how do you explain and risk control and govern your AI. If you go more into the agentic world, that becomes even more of a problem because you're giving autonomy or levels of autonomy to agents. And so the overlay of governance and compliance on production scale data is a huge thing. I mean, humans make mistakes as well, so there will be risk tolerances, but being able to prove, and again, in financial services, regulation is everywhere, and people in the UK are under the senior management regime, and they need to sign up to the fact that they are accountable for doing the right thing and treating customers fairly, and run the function and operate in an uncontrolled manner. So all of those things, not passing compliance and risk, not being able to prove model stability and consistency, not having the data ready, the right data, and fundamentally not being lined up to the interests of the business. So any one of those things can derail your initiative.
Right. So, the answer there is that it starts from data, and good data equals good output. So it's garbage in, garbage out with the models. So you still need to get your data pipelines and data consistency and data quality. We have always seen that the financial firms, they're always drowning in spreadsheets, and there are a lot of manual processes. So can you share an example where automation or AI delivered quick measurable impact without overcomplicating the solution?
There's a nice one that I often talk about that we did for a reinsurance client, which was automating collateral process. And that client had a manual spreadsheet-based process for rebalancing collateral positions monthly, I believe, and there were data files coming across from their business counterparts, large sums of money, $500 million, $1 billion, underwritten by securities positions which need to be revalued. And the spreadsheet that did this, which I sat in the first functional design meeting for this project, and the spreadsheet was, we've all seen big spreadsheets, it was on the large end of the big spreadsheet spectrum, probably 18 tabs. There were things going on all over the place, and rate lookups from bank portals and refactorings and manual interventions all over the place. And the opportunity was to refactor that and take that off spreadsheet and put it into automation technology. Where essentially it was really a single agent workflow. So it was an agentic workflow using AI to triage the information that was coming in from the business counterparties. So to unpack the economics and the collateral positions, and then to sequence it through a workflow and do a recalculation, and then at the end some cash and collateral moved to rebalance the position. And that was a process that took a couple of weeks manually. I'm not sure, headcount, one or two people working on that process on a sort of continual operational cycle, error prone, heavily manual, and also based on a spreadsheet. And we took that down to, actually, it would run in 5 minutes, but it ran in an hour or two because there was some checks, human in the loop checks and balances at certain points before various commitments were made in the workflow. But it was a 2-week process that went down to around an hour. And I really like that one because it literally took headcount out of the organization, and it just took something off a EUC, put it on system, and there was a huge AI driven acceleration.
Right, right. That's a great example, because here the use case that you gave, the value calculation was not overly complicated, and the value was realized very quickly, the way you implemented it. So that is
Yes.
something I also am observing, that there is always a value like productivity gain, or there is a risk that you are mitigating with the help of the use case, but you also have to calculate and associate some dollar value. And that is where I feel that if you don't have the both the know-hows of how the technology is working and what's the business domain mindset, then it's difficult to get that right use case where you are able to associate the dollar value as well as associate the value of either the productivity gain or the risk or any growth or any other things
Yes.
to it. So moving on, from your experience inside banks and consultancies, ultimately we have to deliver the AI use cases. Somebody has to go on and write the code, or these days vibe code it. So what does the ideal team look like to actually deliver AI in financial services across business, data, risk, and compliance?
That's a good question. So we talked about a bit of this. So a business product owner, so it starts with the business. Process analysts, so fundamentally we're automating end-to-end processes. And actually, I've added, as we go through this, there's a couple of other skill sets, but I've added one just in the last few weeks, based on what we were talking about. So you've got business product owner, process analysts, data analysts, and architects, together with the data scientists, and including that central AI center of excellence or innovation team representation. So that link back to the AI standards and frameworks that the organization uses is fundamental. Otherwise, there's sort of pockets of innovation on different bits of technology and approach inconsistently applied across the organization. And AI safety and ethics involved early on as well. So the representation from the head of AI risk or AI safety. And the one that I added is AI itself. So AI, your coding, crawled code, your coding partner, because that's where the industry is now at in terms of developing product.
Right, right. So I see that you need a right mix of people who understand the business, who can own the product or solution that is being built, and then you have the AI assisted engineers who are able to deliver the solution. That's the right kind of team you are looking at, and then probably people who can govern. As you talked about, and govern the aspects of the production delivery as well when it goes into production.
Yeah, that's certainly my view. This feels like it's I'm doing an exam, Keto, because you're going, that's the right answer. It's like, I pass.
Yes. So you may never know. I may be having an AI on my side which is telling me that, okay, you scored 6 on 10 on this question.
I hope so, because Konverge is an AI leader. So I'm very much hoping that I'm pretty sure I'm not talking to Keta's AI avatar. But if you've got an AI assistant over there, that's fine.
Yes. Or you may just give a Turing test to see whether you are talking to an AI or human.
Yeah.
Yes. So my last question of the day for you is that for leaders driving transformation today, I feel that there is a mindset shift which is required in order to go on to this or ride on the AI bandwagon. So, what mindset shift is most critical to move AI from PowerPoint and buzzwords into real operational and competitive advantage?
That's a really good question. So first up, treat AI as a co-worker. We have to embrace it, right? I've spoken to clients at some of our roundtables where they said nothing's going to change. It's going to be the same forever, and it's not true, right? So it's like many things. It sort of creeps up on you, and there can be years of innovation and incremental progress, and then there's a sort of tipping point, and I think we're very much in and past that tipping point. And so embrace the change, treat AI as a co-worker, and learn and cover that education literacy gap. So really focus on educating and getting the workforce hands-on and inviting AI into all relevant activities. And a lot of the AI leaders have written about this, about sort of co-working being the paradigm that we should be adopting. Design for the business strategy, your business ambition, and how that is accelerated and delivered with AI. Understand risks and governance from the start. So start thinking about AI risk right at the beginning and build that into your flow and your approach. And data foundations and AI architecture, build that out consciously. So build the foundations with purpose and understand what you're going to layer your AI for the business on top of, and how to put that together in a AI ready, consistent and compliant way. And then the last thing is just get started. So it's that sort of learning by doing and failing and picking yourself up and doing the next one. All of that is only really learning by getting hands on.
Yes. So I just had one more last follow-up questions to that. Is that so someone as a transformational leader, are there any two or three pointers from you said the point about business strategy, right? So are there any two or three pointers that how to look at this AI technology, and when you are trying to implement the use cases, just two or three pointers to think of from a business strategy point of view?
Well, I think business strategy now coexists with AI strategies. People sometimes talk about what's my AI strategy, and I say, well, what's your business strategy? And the two things have a circular dependency. So I think number one, start thinking about them together. We've actually been doing some AI training. We ran an AI training for the UK's Investment Association into some of their member companies, and it was for senior leadership and board members who are coming from a high level business context, but less aware of the state of the market in terms of AI, what's possible. And what we were doing with those sessions was really back to the educational literacy point. It was, what is this AI thing? Why should we all be paying attention? What's the opportunity and the threat for the business? How does it work? And what do I need to know as a leader in order to be able to set strategy for my firm? I think strategy setting has been and always will be mapping out your target vision for the business and your level of ambition, and then coming up with a roadmap of coordinated actions to get there. So that's really, for me, that's really what strategy is. It's not just a statement of intent, it's actually an actionable roadmap. But in the current market and going forward, I think all firms should be thinking about how does AI play into that execution roadmap, or the how. How do we do this with AI advantage? And many of the things we've been talking about, where it plays into client-facing, business-critical use cases, and all other aspects of the operation.
Right. I think you gave the theme that your business strategy and AI strategy should go hands in hand together. That's a very correct and important point that being made. So having said that, as we come to the end, thanks a lot, Tony, for spending time with us and patiently answering all the questions on the podcast. It is always great to have the conversation with you. Thanks a lot.
Yes, well, thank you for the opportunity. I think you put me through my paces there, so hopefully that all makes sense for the audience. And if anyone wants to learn more or get in touch, then look me up on LinkedIn or at nxwave.com.
Yes, thank you, Tony.